There's a large group of people trying to take on Senator Ted Cruz next November. Cruz is running for a third term. Of the Democrats, three stand out. Dallas Congressman Colin Allred, State Senator Roland Gutierrez of San Antonio, and State Representative Carl Sherman of DeSoto. When it comes to campaign donations, Allred is by far the leader. Heading into October, the congressman banked more than $7 million. State Senator Gutierrez has around $380,000 in the bank. We spoke with both candidates this week, and we asked the congressman about his support of the Biden administration's decision to continue building some parts of the border wall with Mexico.
You recently applauded President Biden's decision to go forward with the 2019 appropriation for Trump's border wall or barrier, whatever you call it. That appears to be in conflict with what you said in 2018, when you said your generation would be the generation that tore down walls, and you expressed concern about it. So why the change in position?
Well, it's not a change. What I was saying then was referring to this idea that was really more of a symbol that then candidate Trump and I guess President Trump was talking about, which was building some kind of wall from sea to shining sea that the Mexican government was going to pay for. That's not at all, of course, what's happened. And that's also not responsible border security. And that's what I've always really tried to talk about, is that there are certain places where physical barriers are an important component, just one component of border security, where we can funnel migrants to a port of entry or to a place where they can be properly processed, both for their security so that they are safer, and so it's easier on our Border Patrol agents.
You have run to a degree on your ability to work across the aisle on bipartisanship. Your opponent, however, says, look, the system is broken. You need someone, a different kind of representative in Washington, more of a fighter. How do you respond to that?
Well, I see my opponent as being Ted Cruz, and that's who I'm focused on beating, because I don't think that we can afford 6 more years of him representing us in the United States Senate.
See your, sorry to interrupt you, you don't see your primary rivals as opponents?
Well, what I see is that I think the same calculation, I guess you could say, for Democratic voters for the primary applies to general, which is who is best positioned and who can best help us beat Ted Cruz, but then also to lead us from day one and bring us together as a state and as a country. Because the project here can't, in my opinion, can't just be about replacing Ted Cruz, who I think has not done the job for the 12 years that we've had him in the United States Senate, who I think has been more focused on being a media personality and being kind of an activist than actually legislating and helping Texans. The project, I think, has to be trying to bring our country and our state back together in a time when I see us coming apart at the seams in many ways. And we have a show horse in Ted Cruz in the United States Senate. In me, we have a workhorse who will replace him, who will go to work every single day, trying to find bipartisan solutions, understanding that I'm not going to get everything that I want, and try to bring us together and lower the temperature some. And when I talk to Democrats across the state, that's also what they want.
So for the people who are maybe not in the mood to compromise with Republicans or work with Republicans, you say what?
Yeah. Well, let's be very clear. When you're talking about being bipartisan and getting things done, that doesn't mean that you sacrifice your values, and I never have in my time in Congress. I was a voting rights lawyer before I came to Congress. I've always stood up for our democracy, and I will continue to do that. But I also know, and I've seen this in my time in Congress, but also just growing up in Texas, growing up in Dallas, going to Baylor, I know that we're not as far apart as our politics kind of indicates, as maybe if you watch cable news, as that says that we are. That's not actually our state or our country. That's just sort of the what I think gets the most attention. And so I've seen in my time here that you actually can get things done when you try and meet people with respect on grounds where you can agree, and you're not going to be able to agree on everything. And I'm certainly going to push back and try and make sure that, for example, Ted Cruz, who I think wants to have a nationwide ban on abortion, that we never let that happen. And we try and codify Roe v. Wade. I'll try and make sure that we pass voting rights legislation to try and equalize our democracy across our country and prevent some of the worst practices that I think we're seeing here in Texas. But at the same time, I'm going to try and find ways to invest in our infrastructure, to invest in jobs, to try and lower costs, to try and lower the cost of healthcare. And to do that, I have to have Republican colleagues join me. We have to have bipartisanship to get anything done in the United States Congress. And so that's the approach that I'll take. And it's one that will actually help people.
You know, Phil, it was interesting to hear the congressman say that he didn't consider his primary rivals his opponents.
And that's where we started with Senator Gutierrez.
Let's start with this. We recently interviewed Colin Allred and mentioned his opponents in the March primary, but he said that he doesn't consider you guys as opponents, that he's focused on Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is his opponent. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, look, I say the same thing. I mean, I get it. That's 101, right? I'm running against Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz, number one, is truly the enemy. I don't think that Colin's political speak, I don't think his message resonates with the people of Texas. I don't like to talk about Colin either, but we do have to talk about his message because his message and my message are vastly different. People have a choice to make, and that choice begins in March. People, I think, in this state are tired of the same status quo politician telling you this nice word of bipartisanship. It's not real.
He has raised, what, over $10 million? You've raised over $600,000. Will you have the resources to amplify your message?
Well, I think the primary is very different from the general, first off. I think whoever comes out of the primary goes and raises a whole bunch of money. I think we slowed Colin down considerably from his first quarter to his second. As far as getting enough money for the primary, I promise you this, Gromer, we're going to work very hard. We're going to run across this state over and over like we have been right now. We're going to raise enough to do that. And we're going to continue with a message that's about progressive values, about working class values for moms and dads across this state. And it's how we're going to fix things at home, at the kitchen table, how we're going to keep their kids safe. And no amount of bipartisan incrementalism is going to get us there. This state and this country right now is on fire. And right now, Colin Allred has done nothing other than say that he's for the border wall, which is what he said 10 days ago. Nonsense. So if his idea of bipartisanship is agreeing with Ted Cruz's stupid idea, then we're in a hell of a lot of trouble.
So the argument of you go to Washington, D.C., you have to somewhat work together to bring home projects, funding, or to just get results in D.C.
Let's talk about Ted Cruz. He voted against the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I call it the jobs bill. Brought $66 billion in money to Texas, including money for his seawall, for the seawall money in Houston that would have saved his own community from another disaster. Votes against that. Votes against the Inflation Reduction Act, which has so much money in it. You've got a guy that has gotten stuck so much in his world of partisanship, of being a partisan, that he won't even vote for the things that bring jobs to Texans. Year after year, it gets worse and worse, not better. And so you tell me what we need to do to fix it. And what we need to do to fix this is what Colin won't do. He said in your paper, in one of these papers somewhere, he said, I'm not here to turn Texas blue. We've been under 30 years of Republican control in this state, and it's because of people like Ted Cruz. We must win this state. We must turn this state blue, and we must get people out to vote. And we must anger them in such a way and tell them the truth.
Devil's advocate here saying, do we really need more anger in our politics at the moment?
Well, listen, I'm 53 years old. This race for me isn't about ambition. Sometimes, I guess it's controlled rage. You know what I've seen because I've talked about it plenty. We all have to be angry about a situation in our country that is unique to this country, where kids are dying, where everybody and anybody can access a gun, like just buying a Coca-Cola, and they're killing our kids.
We have extended versions of these interviews on NBCDFW.com. Make sure to look under the Lone Star Politics section. And also, we reached out to State Representative Carl Sherman in hopes of getting an interview for this show. He told us his schedule was packed and didn't allow it. We hope to talk to him in the near future.
We also reached out to Senator Cruz's campaign after these interviews. They said, in part, the momentum and excitement to re-elect Senator Ted Cruz could not be more tangible, and Democrats better gear up because Senator Cruz is ready for a hell of a fight to keep Texas, Texas.